Hi, you're listening to the Taking Ground podcast, connecting you to the many excellent churches, ministries and people within our wider family. You can keep up to date with the latest from Taking Ground at takingground.org.uk and never miss an episode of this podcast by hitting subscribe. But for now, here's your host, Rachel Broughton.
Well, today my guests are Joe and Anna. You guys are involved in the Eden Project here in Hexham. It's just really cool to be sat with you today. Thanks so much. Really good to have you. As listeners, we want to know people's stories. Yeah. We want to know what brought you to Hexham, or whether you've always been here, and we want to know what God's doing in and through you right now. So I'd love you to just introduce yourselves and share your story.
Yeah. So that would be good. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go there?
I can, but where do we start? It's a long story.
Isn't it funny when someone says, "Oh, what's your story?" It's like, well,
I'll go first.
Go on then.
Okay. So my name's Joe Beswick. I'm originally from Liverpool, as you can probably tell from my accent. I'm not originally from the North East. And what brought me to Hexham is I was involved with a ministry called Bethel. I was there because of reasons that I needed to be there. I suffered with addiction for 15 years, in and out of prison.
So what's Bethel?
Oh yes, so Bethel is a Christian ministry. And it helps people in addiction, helps people who suffer with mental health and all that sort of problems.
So it's like a residential place, or is it like a drop-in? Or?
Yeah, it's a residential.
Oh, cool.
So it takes in people off the streets. It was founded in the 80s in Spain through WEC missionaries, actually going out to Spain to reach those in universities and colleges. But when they got there, on the ground, they found that they were reaching the addict, the prostitute, and it started through one man, Raul Castro, his name was, getting off heroin in a missionary's house. And then the missionary's house got overtook by other addicts, because once Raul Castro got clean and gave his life to Jesus, he ended up going out on the streets, then reaching all his friends.
And everyone wants that, everyone wanted, yeah, wow,
yeah,
that's so cool.
it just blew up, and I think it's in over 80 countries.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it was a real move.
80 cities. 24, 20, perhaps 6 countries, I believe.
That's amazing.
So it was a real move of God.
Yeah.
And I was just in a hopeless mess in Liverpool, and someone recommended me to go to this rehab.
In Northumberland.
It was actually in Derby.
Was it?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I started off in Derby. And I went there, and when people told me it was a Christian organisation, I didn't want to go. It was it was the last place on my mind, thinking about God and this. I just wanted to get clean off drugs. And yeah, I went in, and part of going into Bethel, you have to agree to go to church, do the Bible studies and stuff. And after 4 months of being in there, I really got a conviction of Jesus was real. He was doing something in my life. And I felt myself change, and it wasn't like a dramatic thing overnight that I changed. It was the little things, and it was a process of change, which I stayed in Bethel for. The programme is 12 to 18 months, but I stayed in there for 7 years.
Wow.
And it was the first thing I've ever done and completed and stayed on extra. In my entire time, I didn't complete school. Everything I was kicked out of because of my behavioural problems. But Bethel, I stuck in there because God was with me.
Wow.
I was able to stay in there for 7 years.
That's so cool.
So that brought me from Derby to Hexham, because a Bethel centre was getting opened up in Hexham, and they asked me would I go up and lead the men's house up there.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? Like from not even have completed school and all of that to complete something and then be sent to go lead it.
Yeah.
Lead a part of it. That's amazing. It's just the hand of God, isn't it?
I used to have to pinch myself, because even my family just couldn't believe how long I'd stay clean. They just, because it was always with me as growing up, I'd start something and then I'd quit, or I'd go back into addiction. It was always the revolving door. if so to say. It was just addiction, get clean, back into prison. It was just that revolving door.
Sure.
But yeah, once I encountered God, he was the missing piece of the jigsaw that I've been searching for, you know, which today I'm 15 years clean, still walking with God, and he's done amazing things. And through being in Batel, that's where I met my wife. We got married there.
That's amazing.
So my name is Anna Beswick, living with this man. So how do I start? Yes, my mission career is perhaps since 20 years. Started with a tent maker, being a tent maker for 5 years, and then later on I joined web mission organizations worldwide, evangelizing for Christ. So after my Bible college course, I got sent to Batel.
Okay.
That's how I started with Batel.
So you went to work at Batel?
Yes, as a long-term missionary.
Wow.
So I stayed there for kind of similar years, 7 years.
And where were you first?
I started at the headquarters, Birmingham. I
Okay.
studied there for 2.5 years, and then I got sent to Hexham Centre in order to open the First Lady's house.
Wow.
I came to Hexham and didn't realize God had different plan.
Yeah.
That's how we met.
And you met Joe? Gosh.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you guys met in Batel. You were leading, Joe, you were leading the men's house, and Anna, you were leading the ladies' house.
Yeah.
That's amazing. God just has these things. You're on separate paths, completely different lifestyles, different life, and then God just brings these two people together. That's just a really beautiful picture, isn't it?
There's actually quite a funny story for me to go into Hexham, because all the women's houses are down at that end of the country where it was in Derby, and this was just established, and so you're the furthest away. You had no interaction with all the ladies, and because Batel like to marry within. They don't like you to look outside, so to marry within the ministries. So I designed a wife, and I was like, God, you're sending me to Hexham, like the furthest
away from
all the women's. But then I was like, if that's what you want, Lord, I'm going to go and trust that you have a wife for me. And then after being there for a year or a year and a half, the pastor of the centre said, we're thinking about opening a women's house.
And you were like, yes, all right. The Lord has heard my prayer.
Yeah.
But I also had my own agenda. So in my mind, because I always wanted to go to Africa, that was my destiny.
Okay.
So coming to Hexham, I kind of said to God, well, God, you know what? After a couple of years being in Hexham, just send me to,
I'll go to Africa.
Yeah, I'll go to Africa.
Yeah.
So when this man was kind of fixing me, I was like, no way, God, please.
Yeah, there's an obstacle in my missionary path. Yeah.
So.
I always joke to her, he listens to my prayer. He loves me more than he loves Anna.
Dear.
He listens to me.
Does it still work like that, Joe?
No.
It's just a one-off, was it? Great. So you guys met in Hexham, met in Batel.
Yeah.
And married. How long after you guys met?
So we were dating for about 18 months.
About 2 years.
About 2 years we were dating. Quite difficult how the dating process is in Batel. It's all proper chaperoned. And very good though, as well. But,
And then after 2 years we married. Now 8 years.
8 years.
8 years in. Nice. And so you've stayed in Hexham that whole time, right?
No.
Okay.
So we moved on. You can tell.
Well,
it's to do with your mum.
While we were in Batel, we got sent to a couple of different centers, Batel centers, in order to support centers that probably struggle with leadership or whatever reason. So within the Batel ministry, we moved a couple of times, and I don't know how many years now, but about three years on after we married, we got a phone call from my sister who actually told me that Mom is actually dying. She did have cancer, pancreatic cancer.
Okay.
And the operation went very well.
Okay.
She managed to, in a sense, survive for 4 years, but the return cancer hit her. So we were, what can we do? We had to go back to Korea, but for the circumstances we were facing within the ministry, it was very hard to get released. But long story short, we had to go back to Korea in order to look after my mom for a year. So we moved on from Bethel unexpectedly, and we stayed in Korea for a year.
Yeah.
And then came back. That was 2018 in order to process Joe's Bible College.
Okay.
That's under WAC organization.
Okay.
So that was the vision, that was the heart for me and my wife, was to join WEC, which I did. I joined WEC.
What's that, sorry?
So WEC is the World Evangelists for Christ. It's a mission organisation. So my heart and Anna's heart was both to go to Africa to serve the Lord there. So we wanted to go under the umbrella of WEC and support a WEC team out in South Africa. But in that, WEC suggested to me to go and do some Bible training, which was a Bible college in the Netherlands, which is under WEC, under that umbrella, which I went and done theology and missiology for 2 years, which is one of the most challenging things that I've ever done in my entire life. It was rich, it was good, but coming from a background that I come from, didn't complete school, straight into doing college at a diploma level was quite challenging. The college knew, they said only on my testimony of Bethel is the reason why they would accept me into the college, really. They knew academically with my English I'd struggle, which that's why we worked as a tag team. So Anna helped me in areas with the computer, spelling, typing, making it into an essay format. It was my ideas, but Anna helped me structurally. So basically I just say, I put the dough, Anna made it into a cake. And it was like on my graduation day, I got up and I said in the church, like, Anna should be getting half of this diploma, I should be ripping it in half for Anna. And we really done it as a tag team. It was challenging on our marriage, wasn't it? Because I was stressed, because studying at this level
totally different,
threw me, but by the grace of God I completed it,
and you're still married,
and we're still married
together.
And so then we were out the way in the Bible college for 2 years, and we were thinking about going to Africa all this time, and we needed a sending church. And we already had a relationship with Hexham Community Church.
From your time.
From our time in Bethel.
Yeah.
So I was saying to Anna, maybe, we need a sending church. WEC is talking about we need to have a church that we can come back to. Yeah. That's our home. I said, I don't know any in Liverpool.
Yes.
So I said, the closest I know to a church is Hexham Community Church. So I had a meeting with Neil Strike, the leader of Hexham Community Church. He said that he was warming to the idea of me and Anna becoming members and becoming a sending church. He'd need to speak to the leadership. It wasn't a decision that he could make on his own. Yeah, sure. But it came to an agreement that he would become our sending church. So did you guys come back from Korea to Hexham? Yes.
Or were you in South Africa then?
No,
you were in the Netherlands.
We come back from the
Sorry.
No, so there are some intervals. So went to Korea, came back to Hexham, but we based in Hexham area in order to build relationship with the church. Yeah. So if HCC becomes our sending church, of course they need to know who we are. We need to know who they are. Yeah. So we try to build relationship before we went to the Netherlands for Bible college. So great. Since then, the relationship has built, right?
It has been built, So it's just been, our whole marriage has just been like moving from place to place. It's been absolutely hectic, hasn't it?
I think in the first 3 years, we had been moving 11, 12 places. Wow. So you can imagine unsettlements. I guess this is one of, beauty of missionary lifestyle, but still, you know, it's quite tough.
Yeah, there's beauty and there's also pain in it, isn't there? Because, you know, when you've been somewhere for a long time, there's deep roots, there's deep connections, there's deep relationships. And I guess maybe you had that in Patel because you were there for such a long time. Maybe you had that. But I guess, moving around quite a lot is it's unsettling, isn't it? So obviously you came back to establish some relationships, looking at making HCC your sort of home and your hub in order, in your mind, to be sent out to Africa. So why are you still in Hexham?
That's a great question.
Why am I not doing this over Zoom with you in Africa?
So after his Bible college, we came back to the UK. We had about 6 months. 6 months, to build again relationship with the church before we actually go to South Africa. Sure. So we try to progress our visa situation.
So we're coming back, tried to process the visa situations, and obviously we all know 2020, what that...
Not a lot happened in 2020 in terms of
well,
emigrating.
We know that COVID hit during 2020, so everything was getting locked down in the UK, so I said to Anna, because England was completely on lockdown, I said it'd be better for us if we went back to Korea, done your visa, and then come back to the UK when everything's a bit opened up again. But while we were here, it was quite funny because Eden was kind of getting mentioned to us. Dale, who's the lead Hexham community grocer, was joking with us because they were been looking for an Eden leader for a year plus. I think it was about a year and a half or 2 years even.
I think longer than then, and the leadership was absent.
So they were looking for Eden leaders, and Dale used to say to me, "You would be perfect for Eden, you and Anna." And I said to Dale, unless God completely shuts the door on South Africa, I said, we're not going to believe it.
Let's not have this conversation. It's not funny.
So unless God shut the door, then we wouldn't even consider it. So off to Africa we went, off to Korea we went. Anna was processing the documentation, very good. She got everything, she submitted everything, and then we got an answer from the South African embassy that they're not taking any more visas at the moment, and they didn't know when they were going to start taking more visas.
Wow.
So here's me and Anna. We don't have visas for either country because we're missionaries, so we can't support with financially because we can't support our visas because we're missionaries, we live on support. We're here now in Korea. There's a global pandemic. There's a possibility we could be separated now. And we're like, what are we going to do? And then, as I said to Anna, maybe God's calling us to maybe the Eden Project. Because the doors...
this conversation with Dale just rings in your head like...
it wasn't only Dale, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't only Dale.
As far as I'm concerned, there were quite few people in our church mentioning about names. Of course, little did we know about, you know, these people talking about us regarding Eden. And one of my dear friends who is very prophetic, living in London, actually kind of wonders, well, you pray about it, going to South Africa, that idea, that vision, that call, you've got to double check with God. She had mentioned about more than 6 months as we, you know, since we shared with her about going to South Africa, she never mentioned about what she actually heard from God.
Right, okay.
When I emailed her in terms of the visa I tried to do was refused, she shared, she sent a note while she was praying for us to God, what she actually heard from God.
With the dates and everything.
With the dates, everything. Basically said there is no work in South Africa. Tell Jo and Anna, the work is here.
In England.
Wow.
Start with Eden.
Isn't it so amazing when it's that clear? When it just gives you that confidence, doesn't it, to step into whatever it is that seems like.
She didn't give us that at first. There was a couple of people who wanted to give us words because me and Anna were so tunnel visioned. we were so set on South Africa that people on the outside then were like questioning themselves, am I wrong? And they didn't want to give us it until the door was closed. Shut. Then she said, look, I had this. And then that encouraged us then at that moment to pursue Eden. There's
a conversation actually a couple of episodes before this one with Tony Gray when he's talking about the prophetic and the role of a person who's prophetic, not just to hear from God, but also to discern the right time to share what God said. And I think there's such wisdom in that. Like when somebody's tunnel visioned, you can say whatever you want to say, but they're not going to hear you, are they? But actually, your prayer, God, you're going to have to close the door because this is all we can see you're saying. And God does close the door, then hello, I'm really open to hearing what God's saying from these other avenues, and then you begin to see these other opportunities that God does actually have for you. That's amazing.
And can I just say something as well, because when we was going to South Africa, we faced obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. When we applied for Eden, the door just opened. You see, that's when you know that God was in it. The door very easily just opened for Anna. And now, with us joining Eden, we're able to apply for Anna's marriage state visa, so she can be here permanently. And this was something I was speaking with Steve Mack, who heads up 313. I was talking to him about getting a visa for my wife, and he said, Joe, the only way that you're going to get peace and the proper way is, he said, just go through the marital route. And I'm joining Eden, joining Hexham Community Church.
Having that job, and that stability.
Yeah, God's opened up a door, which was much, it's the scripture in Isaiah, my ways are much better than your ways. My thinking is much better. Higher, we were willing to sacrifice everything, go to South Africa without no visa status. Willing, whatever could happen in South Africa, we could have got sick, another pandemic could have hit. We could have been separated, but God has made a way where we're stable. We're the stablest we've ever been in our marriage, aren't we? Since we've been married, is now because we've got the visa, we're settled in the Eden house, and it just makes life much more easier for what we're doing here in ministry now. Because we're stable in ourselves, we can be stable in the ministry around us.
And also what we want to emphasize on this is that there is not a single doubt. That's how we see. Probably some people say, well, you choose Eden, but this wasn't God's second choice. God's always first choice. We just didn't know because of our own vision, our own call.
That's right.
We get in our own way sometimes, don't we? Of God's best for us.
Exactly. So since we started thinking in our prayers, having a meeting with WEG organization where we belong to as missionaries, they were really up for.
Yeah, they were.
And the church, the whole congregation, we felt, we are welcomed. We are so pleased in some ways to run Eden. So that's how we felt, this is the God's, first choice.
That's amazing. And also, God doesn't waste any of the process. Your Bible training, your Bible college stuff, your whole journey, and also your heart, both of your hearts to be missional, and finding a place and a space to be missional but also stable. That's such a gift to you. So tell me about this missional work that you're doing now. So Eden as an organisation, tell me a little bit about that, and tell me about what that looks like here in Hexham.
Okay, you can start and then I fill in.
Well, so you can start because I had to be about the message trust as well.
Okay, so Eden, I'm not unsure the exact dates when Eden was established, but it was started through the Worldwide Message Tribe.
Yes, it was.
With Andy Orthorn, who heads that up now, who is now the director of the Message Trust. So the Worldwide Message Tribe, they were reaching loads of kids.
It was this band, wasn't it? That just toured around and got loads of young people in. It was so cool. Did one of their songs landed the charts or something? It was crazy, wasn't it?
Andy puts the videos on sometimes when we go down to the prayer days and the conferences. But So you see, like, loads of kids were getting saved, but there was no real follow-up with them, I believe. They didn't know whether they were getting plugged into church. There was no real follow-up with them, so they designed Eden, which was a missional urban mission, where a couple of missionaries like me and Anna would move into an estate. I think the estates were like the 10% of the most deprived in the country.
Yeah, bottom 10 or bottom 5
where, it's been going for a number of years. There's Eden teams scattered all over the UK. I'm not sure on the exact number.
It's so fun to talk to you about Eden because I was part of an Eden team in Middlesbrough, and so it's so fun to talk about it with you guys, having experienced it. So exactly that. So it's bottom 5% deprivation in terms of access to education, healthcare, employment, crime. Like those are sort of indicators, aren't they? And so these are some of the fundamental issues that are in these communities. But as missionaries, you come in, you build your home and your life here, don't you? So it's not about little parachute missionaries that come in and do something and then go home. It's your home is here, right?
So go on.
Okay. So it's not a 9 to 5
job,
right? It's just not basically doing life together with local people, the people who are in need. First of all, in need of Christ, in need of practical ways of their living. So we do quite a lot of things with the local people, from just normal chatting to practical needs like gardening or house moving, cleaning, or child minding, all sorts of things. We try to engage with people again in order to share the good news. That's the bottom line.
Just to initially establish that relationship with people. So we just started up. You mentioned the Love Where You Live. You doing people's gardens and stuff, and just meeting people where they're at. And then being there for people, and it's not as if like we don't live here. People can always knock on our door, and like Anna says, it's not a 9 to 5 job, and that can be it can be challenging, but it's also a joy as well, because you never know when you're there for that person in the darkest hour of the day, that you're just there for them. There's a guy just up the road from us that he struggles quite a lot, and he's shared with me that there's been times where he's been thinking about taking his own life, but with you being there, it's been a great to reach out to you and to come alongside you. So that's a joy. It's such a privilege, isn't it? Really, you're walking with people through every stage of their life, whether you say like you say it's child-minded or helping people with their practical mess and their or whether it's like a mental support and to be able to pray with people and all of that stuff. You mentioned about the Eden House. We're sat in it right now, which is really cool. But tell me about it, because it's not it sort of sits in between two sort of more publicly accessible spaces. So tell me about the Eden House. How did that come about? So the Eden House came about, a couple in the church bought the house, where I think the church leased it from them, and it's a lovely big space. Here we've got a 4-bedroom house that we stay in, which like far too big for us, but I think God's got plans for it. There's a reason why we're in a big house, because and I really believe God's got plans for that. So one side of the house is where I do my coffee mornings, coffee lounge. People come in, and it's just like a place where people just have fellowship, chatting, and we do that every Monday morning and every Friday morning. And then generally it's an office for Dale, who works in the community grocer. And on the other side of my house, they have converted my garage into a community grocer shop, which has got over 1,000 members. Can you believe?
That's amazing. Because in my conversation with Dale, I was talking to him because you think of Hexham as quite an affluent area, and he said there are those two types of clientele. There's the clientele who come because the shops are expensive, but they can afford to pay something for their food. So it's sort of that step and that bridge between a food bank and a normal maybe Tesco or something. But then there's also those sort of eco-conscious people who come. So it's really just catered to everybody, and that's quite amazing, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And I just think the what we're in now with everything on the rise, it's
cost of living.
The cost of living, it's really helping people, you know. And obviously, that's saving of food waste and
we
stuff.
have lots of customers from outside of Hexham.
Yeah, they come.
People travel in for it. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are your biggest encouragements? How long have you been doing Eden now?
So it's gonna be 3 years in 1st July.
Okay, so a couple of years this year. So as you've started, as you've built relationship, as you've got to know people, the community, you've started up your coffee lounges and your grocers. What are your biggest encouragements personally as missionaries?
I think seeing people coming to Christ, that's God. That's the main, and that we've seen that over the last 2 years. And for the first year of Eden, we didn't.
It's all right.
Sorry. For the first part of Eden, we didn't really reach out to the kids, and that's what Eden is. It's a kids.
Youth.
It's a youth, people, young people. But we got as we took over Eden, we were getting fed it's really mainly just adults and stuff. But once you move into that Eden house, and you see on an evening, you do see the kids, you see them playing on the field and stuff. I just really felt like a heart to just reach out to them, and we've just started a youth night in the Eden Lounge next door. So I think that's a great encouragement for me now to really be plugging into the youth, and obviously the Alpha courses, seeing people saved is
just always good, isn't it?
Ultimately the best for me.
For me, say for example, building relationship, it takes lifestyle. It's not gonna be done overnight. What we need to build relationship, because we need to earn trust. We need to earn respect and honor, and they need to know who we are, so that they can trust in us. That's, I think, very important.
And then trust God in you as well.
Exactly.
That's it,
living out accordingly, what the Bible talks about, it's not about, yes, you need to come to church, yes, have faith, they have to see how we live out, what we actually preach, what we actually talk about. So that's, I believe is like long term, marathon. It's not going to be done, overnight. But in the midst of all we're doing is that people, I must say God has been bringing his people that he wants to be in this circle. Up to now, through Alpha course, through some sort of Bible groups we are actually doing, people have come to Christ, and that's such a great joy for us as missionaries, watching and witnessing, and the growth. You see, it's not about being saved and that's all.
Yes.
It's actually how they live out according to
how
what
they continue to walk
exactly.
with God.
That's our aim, and God has been so faithfully leading us how to direct people.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
So encouraging. Guys, if people listening today could pray for you and pray for the people that you are witnessing to and your missional life here, how could they pray?
Can I start?
Yeah.
We know life has ups and downs. There are high moments, there are low moments. Because the location we are in between the two different ministries, sometimes I feel I should do more. And even on our days off or holidays, I don't feel quite relaxing. Does that make sense?
You can't fully switch off.
Exactly. So and plus what we actually see is when people log on our door, you can't just say, well,
we're on holiday, sorry.
You can't do
it's
that.
Saturday. Come back on Monday.
That's one of our challenges.
Yeah,
part more likely for me, you know, I struggle with that. So if you just pray for wisdom, how I can effectively use my days off, whatever, you know, time off, be great. And plus, that's something, you know, the time when I can charge myself in order to engage with people more effectively. Yeah. So that's something, you know, I always ask people to pray about.
Yeah, of course. Oh, that's a good one, Anna.
And I think as well for us personally as missionaries, I think pray for our marriage, because, you know, if we believe in a God, we believe in an enemy as well, that he's come to kill, steal and destroy. And I think on the level of work that we're doing here at the East End, the devil doesn't like it. Yeah. And what he wants to do is get in between us. And if he can do that, if he can separate us and bring us against each other, then he's doing his job. So if you just pray for our marriage that way, for protection for us, and that will probably be...
That's great.
Can I say another thing as well? This is quite personal, but in terms of the ministry, of course, the first thing, you know, we want to see more of people coming to Christ.
To know Jesus,
Exactly. There are some opposition while we are facing, you know, and dealing with local people. There are people who seem anti-Christ, right? So if you just pray that God would open these people, the hearts become softened that they may hear what God actually has to offer.
That's so good. I was loving you when you were saying God brings to you who he's clearly bringing to you, and you know, God doesn't just suddenly start working in people when they meet you. God's working in people's hearts, and often it's those hardest people that they're reacting to God doing something already. But definitely praying for that for you guys. Guys, at the end of each of my podcasts, I invite my guests to share a worship song that is speaking to them at the moment. Do you have something that God is just, a song, perhaps a worship song that's just going over in your mind, something that's speaking to you afresh, just encouraging you?
Yeah, so the song that I've got is Firm Foundation, and it's wrote by Maverick City, and I just like it in that song where he says, like, I've still got joy in chaos, you know, and I was really struggling a few weeks ago. There was a lot going on the East End. As I said, it's not all flowers and daisies, but we are in a spiritual battle, I believe it. And it was a time, like, I just felt like God was a million miles away, and I just didn't have that joy. But then listening to that song, like Firm Foundation, it was just reminding myself that I'm rooted on Christ, and I can still find joy, you know, in the chaos. And it's just listening to that and just letting the words just wash over in me when I'm in that place, just really lifts my spirit.
Amazing.
And reminds me of the God of who we serve.
Maverick City Firm Foundation. Any for you, Anna?
For me, Waiting Here for You. I've been listening to this song since perhaps last October. I'm still listening. The reason why I love and, you know, really into this song is coming to Christ with expectation. Yeah. And what we are actually doing here on this estate is without God we can't do, and without God whatever we do is gonna be fizzled away. Without the presence of God, I don't think, you know, people will come to Christ in and through our lifestyle. So it's so important that we hear God. Yeah. We wait on Him and what He really wants us to do, what He really wants us to deliver into people's life. And without His direction, without His guidance, we're not going to be successful in this work. So that's...
Listen and follow. That's what Jesus modelled, isn't it? But we have to wait for that sometimes. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Guys, thank you so much for sharing It's encouraging. It's inspirational, and it's an encouragement to missional life. You know, you don't have to be in Africa to be missional. Where you are, your street, where you live, it's important, and God's placed you. And your story is, God's placed us here. And for everyone listening, God's placed you where you are. Whether you're in the car on the way to work, on the train going somewhere, whether you're at home cleaning the house, whatever it is that you're doing, you're placed, you're positioned. And God's got something for you exactly where you are. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm excited because I'm going to have a tour now of the Eden complex here. So I'm excited. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Guys, thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.